Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg's coming to you on the 8th of February, 2021. Time on deck, 190600 hours, Central Standard Time. Now, we've got two special guests tonight, two great guests that some of you should know. Gail, with Gail Angeles with Rainbow Food Rocks, and we have Dr. Paul Cottrell. Both have been guests on my channel before, and so we're fortunate to have them both together all at once here. Now, what a lot of you may not know is that we have all kind of worked together to start an organization known as the Freedom Restoration Foundation. It was my idea that we need to organize this because our freedoms are under such attack today. So we didn't think it was just enough to preserve them. We thought we needed to get some restoration going. We need to go a little bit farther, and that's the source of the name. Now, I'm going to basically play ignorant tonight and act like I didn't have any idea about that. I'm just going to ask some questions, so bear with me for that. Because I like to get more from Gail and Paul and let them talk and share their perspective on this, so that, tonight we're going to talk about statism. We're going to talk about the encroachment of the state on our freedoms and liberties and how that is accelerating, and maybe some of the things we can do about that. And both of these other individuals have been very active in that respect. So maybe this will help you have some ideas of what you can do, aside from joining our Freedom Restoration Foundation, which you can always write info at Freedom Restoration Foundation and put freedom in the subject line and email us, and there'll be links below to that. We do have a Facebook group. We have a MeWe group, so you can check all that. Links will be provided below for that too. So, and also, I do a lot of topics on my channel, so please subscribe to my channel, bang the notification bell, and bang all. But each of these other two individuals also have wonderful channels, so please also subscribe to their channels, Gail and Paul. And I'll try to put some links to their channels in here. They both cover a lot of good stuff and deserve your support. Now, all that said, also one more shameless plug here, if I might. It is planting season. One of the best things you can do to maintain your freedom is make sure you can grow your own food. And Gail with Rainbow Food Rocks knows what I'm talking about. She does that. She also rocks at it. But I have links below to True Leaf Market. So if you can help my channel by going to True Leaf Market, and you will find great deals in there on heirloom GMO, non-GMO seeds that are all natural grown. So they're good non-GMO stuff that you can get and grow your own seeds. Oh, you can save seeds from them and regrow and get the same thing back over and over and over. That's what the heirloom open pollinated seed sources do for you. But this is the way you need to roll if you're going to survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive in the future, so that you can feed yourself and your family for the long term. I highly encourage that you really do that. Check out my link, True Leaf Market. All right, with that said, all right, folks, it's been interesting. We've had these past several months have been interesting. It's getting more interesting every week, it seems. So it so happens, I'm going to turn to Gail first. I'm going to let ladies go first. Hope you don't forgive me for that, Paul. But Gail has been active with some situations with her library, trying to get in with her kids. And she's also been very active. She's basically got our Arizona chapter of the Freedom Restoration Foundation. She's been very active politically in her state, including initiative that we're pushing today to get, you tell it, but Gail.
Sure. Yes. Well, to start with what you just left off, so there's the SCR 1001, and there's going to be a vote tomorrow. Now, what that will do is that will end the state of emergency for Arizona. And we really need that. If we go back into prior discussions, I don't think it was on your channel, Greg, but Paul and I had discussions on his channel months ago about how with, trying to remember the laws, with 36-787, 788, 789, and 790, when you're under a state of emergency, they can force vaccinate and force quarantine. So we have been really adamant about wanting to reverse that. So this SCR 1001 will end the state of emergency. And part of our problem was that legislation was not in session, and now it is. So now we can get the ball rolling. So I called up 4 Republican senators today, and apparently they're getting flooded with calls, which is exactly what we wanted. Yay. And I heard from them that most of them are in support, and some of them have gotten so many calls, and they're all for this SCR 1001. So it's feeling like when they take the vote, this should go through. So, I mean, it could be the case that it doesn't happen, but that's what we're hoping for. So I've done my part of sharing this information with as many people as possible here in Arizona, and they are and have been getting flooded with calls. So tomorrow they make the decision, which is why I was adamant about getting people to call today and earlier in the week, or last week, I mean. And so hopefully that goes through, and I don't know and quite understand the process of once they vote on that, if everything is in favor, how that works, because usually the governor can veto, but this is a little different, and I don't understand how it's different, but I was informed about it. It's a little different, so I don't quite understand. And the other thing that you were talking about is the library. So up until last week, in the beginning of last week, I was able to go to a library that's literally just a minute away. It's around the corner from my house with my kids. And the way they have it set up is when you walk into the library, they have it partitioned off, so only those in masks can enter on the hour, every hour for 45 minutes to browse all the books, get what they want, read. They can sit down on chairs, they can sit on the floor, they can touch whatever they want, and then they close after the 45 minutes for 15 minutes, disinfect apparently everything, although that's, in my opinion, impossible. And then they open it back up for the next hour on the hour. So up until the beginning of last week, I was able to actually go with my kids, and I was using my papers that I was carrying. So I have a multitude of papers that I carry, and I just want to educate people about these papers. So I have two different kinds of exemptions. I have a medical exemption, but I also have a religious exemption. Traditionally, I go around using my medical exemption because I just feel like it's easier to pull out Arizona Disability Law's letter that goes over the ADA and everything. And so when I originally was able to go through this partition where they have it blocked off on the hour, I was asked, where's your mask? I need you to wear a mask. And then I had gotten special approval from the manager because they had never heard of exemption paperwork. So I'd gotten special approval from the manager, her name is Stephanie, so that I could go in with my kids. And I kind of had an awkward feeling like, I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm very intuitive about that. But I thought, okay, well, the manager is the one that's in charge. And if she says it's okay. So the other times I had gone in, I was able to go in with my kids. And then I went, I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Tuesday. I'd have to look back in my notes. And so last week I went, and I just had this feeling. I said to my kids right beforehand, I said, kids, I have a feeling that really soon they're not going to let us in. I don't know why, but brace yourselves. We might not be able to go in today. I don't know why. And I happen to be having a little bit of a rough day. I had some things that happened in the morning, and I was trying to figure out solutions for it. And I had worked the night before on that. So I was really worn out. I had barely slept. My kids had been waking up in the middle of the night. So I was pretty worn out. So I go in, and the lady that normally would let me in says to my son, no mask. And kind of says it in a way that I knew right away, we're going to have a problem. So I said, oh, yeah, remember I'm the one with the exemption. Stephanie said it was okay. She goes, oh, hold on. She starts like kind of almost shaking when she says it. I got to go get my manager, my branch manager. And so I'm like, okay. And I know right then and there, this is going to be a problem, because why would you get the branch manager unless you're going to somehow reject me? So the branch manager she says she's the branch manager, but her card doesn't say so. She comes out, and I could tell right away there was no way I was going to get through to her, but I thought, well, I try. I said, Stephanie gave me the permission. She goes, well, we've changed our policies. Okay, may I have a copy of the policies? Is there someone above you that I can talk to? So she gives me this card of this assistant, I don't know, manager or branch manager or something. So I'm like, Okay, so I said to her, I said, you know, it's been a lot of trouble. I carry around all these papers. I've had to talk to Arizona disability law. I've had to go to civil rights. You know, I've had to get all these papers that I carry, and I literally carry a stack. And I got special permission. You know, my kids come in here, they read over 50 books a week. You can look at my library record. I homeschool. I need access to the library to do my job teaching my kids. And there was just no way she would budge. So I just couldn't hold it in after a year of being through this with being rejected at Sprouts and Natural Grocers and all these other things. I just started bawling, crying. And the lady could care less. There was no being sensitive, nothing. So I was like, that's it. I'm just going to take the few books, because I had very few books on hold. And I tried to explain to her, you know, my kids really need to physically hold books. And she was like, well, you can do the online checkout. Well, that's not the same. We actually gather all the books by looking at them, touching them. The kids look at them and decide, oh, maybe I want to borrow this. They read a few pages. So anyhow, I go and check out. I'm like crying. I check out the very few books that I had on hold. And I get to the car and explain to my kids what happened, because they're like, why is mommy crying? Mommy never cries. And I decide, you know, I'm going to muster up and I'm going to get the courage to take this on. So previously I had taken on an incident at Sprouts, but because I was able to check out, I didn't have a case with the Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division. So I thought to myself, you know what? I carry around a lanyard that explains that I have a religious exemption based on my religion, which falls under the Christian branch. So I thought, you know, I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to muster up the courage, even though I was shaking. I'm going to videotape it. I'm going to go into this lady and I'm going to show her my exemption, and I'm going to hand her over a notice with all the civil rights written down, all the laws, and I'm going to give it to her, and then I'm going to write up something to the Attorney General. So I decided to do that. I was shaking like a leaf. I walk in with my camera. I told my kids, I'm like, I hope I don't get in trouble doing this. But there was no sign saying I couldn't record. And it's as long as one party is knowledgeable in the state of Arizona, you can do it. So I videotape and I asked her again on the recording, you know, can I have a copy of the policy? She doesn't have the policy. She again tells me to write this other guy. I'd written the other guy, and to this point in time, I still don't have any policy that states that I can't enter. So I let her know about the religious discrimination. I gave her the notice. I had a late fee that I noticed she voided because she didn't want to let me in past the partition to go to the register to pay, which I'm grateful for that she voided, but I noticed that she really was adamant about not letting me pass the partition. So I go to type everything up. I go to file with the Attorney General, Civil Rights Division under religion. And I'm like, it's like midnight at night. And the whole thing says that it wasn't accepted by the civil rights. Something went wrong with their system. So I was like, oh my gosh, like it was one thing after another. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a video about this. I'm going to show my persistence. I'm going to print out the documents and I'm going to get them certified mail. Well, lo and behold, I make a video showing that part too, but I don't have to do it because the civil rights office winds up calling me and I set up an intake appointment, which I'll have in March. So I'm using this experience and changing it for the positive, trying to show people that they can start standing up for themselves. And it took a lot of courage for me to do it because I personally was nervous and I didn't want to have to do that. And I think that so many people are going through the same thing where they just don't want to have to go through that. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to be the example. I'm going to be the change. That's been, you know, Rex's motto. I've been taking that on as my motto. And I mean, I even canceled Facebook and Instagram because I don't agree with their terms of service. So I am really trying to show people that I'm trying to uphold civil liberties. And so if people are curious, I mean, the first step is that they can go to the Attorney General Civil Rights Division. If they're actually harassed, they can also file something with the Department of Justice, which is something I could have done with the Sprouts incident, because if people go back, I don't think I uploaded it onto my new channel, but I had an instance where I was intimidated at Sprouts, and I had used that as an educational video back on Rainbow Food Rocks channel a few months ago. So I'm trying to show people that they can start standing up for themselves. And then again, like we talked about in the beginning with the SRC 1001, trying to teach people that you can call your senator, and it's so easy. People are so afraid, but it's literally just calling them up, talking to the secretary for 2 seconds, saying your name, where you live, and what you're in support of or against. And it's that easy. And what I find is when I talk to people, they're at first like really nervous. Like it's so hard for them to pick up the phone because they don't know what to say. And it's really that simple. They don't have to say much. They just say I'm for or against it. And then they tally it up.
Yeah, by the way, I did share that on the Freedom Restoration Foundation Facebook site, since you're not a member of it. And I also put it on my page. And I emailed, actually I text messages several of my friends in Arizona about this and the details that you gave to me. So hopefully that got some of them making phone calls. And for those that don't know, I actually have 40 acres in Arizona. So looks like I might be heading that way in the not too distant future, at least on and off. You know, time will tell how much time I spend there versus Alabama. So we will see. It's all an open book right now. So Gail, you've been a great leader in that respect for showing us what's coming up and the things that we can do, and especially pointing out that legislation. And hopefully that will make a difference in that area. Another great leader in this whole area and arena has been Paul Cottrell. Dr. Cottrell has from the inception been a stalwart defender of freedoms, and has been pushing and struggling against statism. And he's got his own YouTube channel where he's just been hammering at that for some time. So Paul, tell us what's on your mind in this area, as if I have never heard of statism. Educate us.
Well, I'd like to kind of frame it in historical context. So as you know, Greg, you know, many people in my family served in the military. My father served in the army, and he served in Germany during the rise of the Berlin Wall. All right. So he served from 61 to 63. So as you know, the Berlin Wall was erected the third quarter of 61. My father was in Germany when that was happening. So, so how does that parlay with what's going on in Washington, D.C.? We see nothing but a wall, literally a wall being built to surround different institutions in Washington, D.C. It's very similar to when JFK was president and was sending, supplies and dropping them in Berlin, because Berlin was fractured, even though it was in the the Ally side, not the Russian side. It's fractured because of the wall. So there was airdrops that were taking place. So there is a wall literally being built in this country to divide the government from its people. And this is the beginnings of statism. Statism is basically where you have a government not listening to its people, and it's creating laws and telling agencies and police forces to, if citizens say certain words, then that's a thought crime, or it's a crime against humanity. Or if you are an affiliate towards a certain political party or a certain political candidate, then you're an enemy of the state. See, these are tools that all statists use. See what was going on in Russia during the 60s. You know, people were actually literally, as they were putting that barbed wire down for the Berlin Wall, people were running to get onto the west side instead of being in East Berlin.
Well, how can that be? Communism is so great and wonderful. All the kids tell us that these days.
Well, exactly. Communism, anyone that has ever lived under communistic rule wants to get out of it. No one says that it's a panacea, and it's not. Now, but what was going on with those individuals running from East Berlin to West Berlin, as they were literally putting barbed wire and blocks of concrete and stuff, this is very similar to where Gail is at the moment. She's an East Berliner trying to get to freedom on the West Side as they're literally building a wall. And this, my concern here is that because of the current party, the Democratic Party, having the legislative power and the executive power, that they're going to ramrod legislation that's going to advance statism. You've already heard that individuals that voted for Trump are considered domestic terrorists. Individuals that happen to buy a Starbucks on January 6th at Union Station in Washington, D.C. are on a list to be interviewed by the FBI. All right, this is out of control. And what's happening is that you have companies giving data to the FBI, such as Bank of America, stating these are individuals that use their debit card or went to an ATM machine in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. All right, so what's happening is that the government is putting pressure on individuals that have free thought. And this is something that 1984 by George Orwell, warned us against. He wrote the book in 1948. So the title 1984 was just a play on the year that he actually published. All right, but the bottom line is this: he was warning us against statism and that fascist thought. But you can see that what is being almost on a daily basis in the news is basically coming right out of Nancy Pelosi's mouth that, well, I need more protection. I need more troops. I need a larger wall. If you were a Trump supporter, you need to be investigated. And, you have some, crazy representative saying that they need to drone strike us like we were some sort of terrorists from the Middle East. This is getting out of hand. But the thing is that the wall still is being built. We're at the very early stages, just like at the Berlin Wall, where they put the barbed wire in first. And then eventually they put in, much more concrete and other apparatuses to keep people in East Berlin. But this is happening right now in our country, in our capital. And then you have individuals that are from the Democratic Party, because they want to control Congress forever. They want to make Washington, D.C. a state. Uh-huh. And by doing that, now this is antithetical to what the founding fathers and George Washington wanted. They did not want the capital to be in New York. New York used to be, early days in our republic, used to be the capital. But they didn't want it to be, because that was where finance was. And they didn't want to have the power of finance making and controlling government. So they put it into literally a swamp, and George Washington laid it all out because he was a surveyor. And that was where the capital was going to be.
Do you think
right?
maybe
And it was supposed to be separate as a separate state. It shouldn't even be a state. It was a
federal district.
Right. And it should have never been a state, because what's happening is then the power, the centroid of power will shift towards a state, a particular state now. And it was never supposed to be that way. Now, the Republican Party can do one even better. In the charter in Texas, because it's so big, there's a reason why it was so big. There's a charter that allows it to be broken up into 4 different states. Or is it 5? I thought it was 4, but okay, so 5, it's even better. But the point is that Texas can be broken up, and it could almost guarantee that the Republican Party maintains power in Congress.
Yeah, but they're all proud to be Texans, so they'd have a hard time doing it. It's more like,
well, you could call them Texan 1, Texan 2, Texan 3, Texan 4, and Texan 5. It doesn't matter.
But it's more likely Texas will leave the union than break up.
Well, so, but the point here is that when you have a one-party rule in the executive branch and in the legislative branch, what will happen is you get these laws that are just rammed through, and there's no reconciliation, there's no meeting at the middle ground, and this is very similar to what happened with Obamacare. The Democrats had power, and they just pushed it through. And they didn't want reconciliation. I mean, the famous phrase from Nancy Pelosi was, "Don't read it, just sign it and then read it later." So I mean, this is something very similar. So
you have to prove it to know what's in it.
So now what's happening? Now they're building up the wall physically, and they're using troops, National Guard troops, as now Nancy Pelosi's little army. It's unacceptable. This is not what our government is supposed to be. And there needs to be more individuals in Congress talking about the complete overreach. I think the only one that's really been vocal in the mainstream media about the overreach is Rand Paul. I don't know of anyone else other than him that has articulated basically what I'm saying, that the government is getting too big, it's overreach, and now it's time to start thinking more centrist. No matter what someone thinks about Clinton in terms of Bill Clinton as president, if you look at him compared to the other Democrat presidents, he was a centrist. So he was able to somewhat reconcile whatever the differences were between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The problem is happening now is that one party gets into office and has power, they push through. I mean, perfect example is right after 9/11 and how we ramped up the Middle Eastern war and never ended it. So it's not, I'm not being just negative towards the Democrat Party. The problem is that the government is starting to become dysfunctional, because now you have one party running the show. And it's going to push this Bio Patriot Act that I'm very worried about. See, these elements that Gail was talking about, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's coming with the Bio Patriot Act. We saw it right after 9/11, the Patriot Act, and how our civil liberties were lost.
Tell people more about how you see a Bio Patriot Act. We've talked about it, but it's been months ago, so kind of refresh my viewers' memory on that.
All right, so the Bio Patriot Act, there is a connection between 9/11 and what is happening right now. I call it the canonical event. It's a bookend. It begins at 9/11, all right, and the loss of civil liberties and a never-ending war in the Middle East, and fast forward to Event 201, and it's a mirror image, all right? And because there was 102 minutes that for the towers to fall. So Event 201 is the mirror image of 9/11, and this Wuhan crisis, this pandemic that's going on, is unleashing overreach of governments across the world. I'm a little bit more centric to the United States because I live here. All right, so what is starting to happen is you're starting to see, well, you might have to be forced vaccinated if your company is saying that you have to have it. So the elements of the Bio Patriot Act are giving funds to police to have more military grade equipment. So you can see that happening now because of what happened on January 6th. You're already seeing the militarization of the government against its people through the National Guard. So they're gonna appropriate funds for military grade equipment. They're gonna appropriate funds with the local municipality police force that's going to be using surveillance technology plugged into 5G to be able to do real-time tertiary, surveillance. So, if they were surveilling me, they would be also surveilling Gail, because there's 1 degree of separation there, through our contacts. So they're going to be given, and I see it, what's happening in New York right now. New York has drones, has cameras almost on every corner now. So what is happening in New York is going to come to a theater near you, guaranteed, through the Bio Patriot Act. That's the funding mechanism. Then the elements of saying, you know what, because the economy is terrible, there is this great reset that is starting to happen. And that's going to cause instability in the currency market. So what's going to happen is they're going to shut down real coinage in dollars, and you won't be able to take it out of the bank. So what they're going to do is they're going to do a digital dollar and create the digital wallet. And if people think that I am not, that I'm just making this up, it was originally written in the first stimulus bill for this crisis by Nancy Pelosi, and it was struck down by the Republican Party. So they want this. Now, what's interesting here is that now you have a Democratic party in office, and Yellen is going to push for this digital currency. That's, that's where her mindset is, with economics. So that's another element of the Bio Patriot Act, is your inability to be able to take the money out of the banking system and hide it under your mattress, just like what my grandmother did because she had to go through the Great Depression, So people are going to be locked in. So, and then what happens is there's social scoring. Mm-hmm. So if Gail, so for example, Gail, who's trying to run out of East Berlin and get into West Berlin, right? Now she has a social score. She's saying, you know what? You went to that library and you didn't have a mask on. Therefore, you lost 50 social scoring points. And now you can only buy bread on Tuesdays. See? So what's going to happen is there's going to be a curtailment of how you spend your money or how you transition to another job. Or go to a university.
They can make you persona non grata too.
Right, exactly.
And
well, what we'll do is they'll put guardrails on what you can do, hoping that you'll capitulate and become an element of the state, be a servant of the state, all right? Obey the state, but as people begin to disobey, there's probably gonna be about 10% that disobey, the rebels, that subculture rebel that wants, freedom, when they're not staying in the guardrails, they're gonna keep on putting down that social score. So, think about it right now, okay? The things that I've been publishing about statism, about what was going on with the Bio Patriot Act and all that, you can almost start seeing the social scoring happening with when I need to apply for residency. So I have to find someone during the interview for residency that is like-minded, that actually sees its country's going to hell and that we have to fight for it. But there's a lot of liberals out there, or there's a lot of individuals that aren't liberal but are afraid to say anything, and they're just going to stay in East Berlin. So, statism is dangerous, and statism leads to Nazism. Because if you don't think what the party wants, you are put into a category as undesirable. Now instead of wearing the Star of David, the yellow Star of David on your jacket to show that you're a Jew in Germany, now it's going to be, well, you gotta wear a T on your jacket to show that that to say that you used to be a Trump supporter and that you have to be watched. This is the crazy stuff that's going on in this country. You had the AOC, Maxine Waters, and the other squad that's part of the squad, basically saying that people that are not for their type of governance are domestic terrorists, and that we need to be hit by drone strikes. But here's the strange thing. I know probably in your area the police officers probably don't have drones. Maybe they do. But I know that they have drones here, and it's not that hard to put a gun on a drone, all right? So the government is getting out of control. And then you get to the point where you got HHS knocking on the door and asking for an anal swab. It's getting out of control, and people need to stand up for it. So I commend what Gail is doing from trying to escape from East Berlin and get to West Berlin as Nancy Pelosi's building the DC wall.
I want to add something to what you were talking about earlier. So I went to a meeting, I'm trying to remember the name of the group. I think it's called Arizona Stands United. And we were talking about if someone is forced to get the vaccine for work, they can go to icandecide.org and they can get help there. So they are prepared to take people to help them. So I just wanted to throw that in there as something else to yet empower people, because what I really want to see is I really want people to start taking action. And there are a lot of people that are just afraid, they're worn out, they're burnt out, they just don't have any more energy in them to stand up. So I'm just constantly trying to give people these tools to do little bits of something here and there. So that is something that I think is going to be really important as we are starting to hear, and I'm hearing firsthand stories of people that are being told they need to either get the vaccine or they will lose their job. So that is something that is really occurring. So again, that's ICAN decide, DECIDE.org.
Well, see what you just said is a great example of what to do. But it's going to get harder and harder as the wall, as an analogy, continues to be built and gets thicker, and it's harder to go through. So like early on, it was easy to pass the wall in East Berlin to go to West Berlin. But as they've started to, militarize it, it was becoming harder and harder. And this is my point with statism, is that we are fastly approaching the Rubicon where the government is going to inhibit the individuals from moving from East Berlin to West Berlin. All right. What you're trying to do, you're at the early stages. But if people in Congress say, slow down, Nancy, slow down, AOC, we're not going down this road. We're not going to be, this crazy socialistic nation that you want us to be turned into. If people don't do that, that wall, metaphorically and literally, is going to advance rapidly. And what you're doing isn't going to be allowed anymore. Like, for example, all right, people were trying to get over the wall. I'm using it as an analogy to try to really set in the people's minds that they're listening, well, how important this is. People early on, as they were crossing over, would get shot, even though there was only barbed wire. In this day of age, it's going to be, you can't get a job, or you can't go and buy food for your family, or you can't go to the library to teach your children. So that's the analogy, is to say, you try to cross that border, that imaginary line that they created for statism that you're trying to cross. Right now, it's a little bit easier to cross, but it's going to get harder and harder exponentially as we move on through 2021. And people need to start realizing, don't be afraid, because that's what happened with the East Berliners. They were afraid because some people were shot and they decided not to do anything. Exactly the same thing that happened to the Jews in Warsaw. A few people were killed, and then the rest capitulate, saying, well, just live another day and hopefully it'll be better. But the bottom line was this, that better day ended up getting on a goddamn train and going to a gas chamber. And this is the point that I'm making, is that we have to beachhead that wall that is being formed in this country now, or it's going to be a hell of a lot harder in the third or fourth quarter of 2021. So more people need to do what you're doing, Gail. But if they don't, what I'm predicting is going to be dire. And that is that statism is going to be here for a long time. It's not going to be, it's not going to be like, well, maybe the next election. No. Statism, they already rigged the election. Right. They're in power. They're always going to rig the election. This thing is never going to go away for 40 years.
So here's some ideas I have too. I had attended a training with the Foundation for Conservative Leadership, and they help teach some strategies because we do need to still use the system to help us. So that's just one possible route to go. Another one is, and I know you and I have talked about this, and we've talked about the pros and cons of this, for right now to start working together, as we've been saying and promoting, and I know Greg does too, of growing your own food, starting to trade with people, developing a system. I mean, I'm personally swapping books with people now. I mean, this whole library instance and experience has propelled me forward even more to come up with creative solutions. And there are many people here in Arizona that are trying to work together, many groups that I wish were actually united, but they happen to all have slight little differences, that are trying to make a difference. So I feel like if we keep teaching people, like when I was messaging people, even up to this morning, people were unaware what the significance was about removing the state of emergency. And there was that element of education. And then there was that element of me giving them something personal, saying, not telling them what to do, but just saying, I personally, you know, yada, yada, yada. So that's why. And so then that they were like, oh my gosh, well, A, I didn't realize that there were laws on the books about forced vaccination and quarantining. And B, you know, I didn't realize that you went through X, Y, and Z. So then people were like, yeah, well, if it's just literally, you know, calling the top 2 people out of the 4, I can quickly make 2 phone calls. And then they were like, oh, okay, I can make this small difference. So I think that we need to just keep on encouraging people. I completely see what you're saying about all these possibilities, and we are seeing a lot of these things play out that we prophesized or dreamt of or talked about way back last year. I want to give people hope still and give them tools for their toolbox to keep fighting in a positive, peaceful way. And so I'm going to keep doing that. And now with this library thing, I'm going to do it even more. And one other thing is that people that live in Arizona, I want to make them aware that there is an RTS that they can do. It's a request to speak. They go down to the Capitol, and if they can't make it to the Capitol, we have a team of people that are willing to help them out and submit their email and create an RTS account. And then they can do yay or nay on bills and such. So that's another thing that we're trying to educate people about. And these are really simple things. They just log in the account, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down for whichever they want. But we really need people to start doing this, and either they themselves going down to the Capitol and getting these RTS accounts, request to speak accounts, or letting us know. They can even email me. I'm info at rainbowfoodrocks.com, and I can get them, because we have people regularly going to the Capitol to help out, can get them an account. But there's something so small that they can just click. They don't have to call. If they're worried about calling and dealing with a person, or they just don't have time, like we're trying to find all these different ways to help get our voices heard. So I'm going to keep putting out all these positive solutions, and I'm not going to give up, because, and as both of you already know, I have spent 5.5 years healing my children, and I have gotten to a point where nobody would believe the stories of how it used to be and how everything we went through and how my kids were suffering and I was suffering. So I will keep on positively and peacefully fighting for our civil liberties and our freedoms.
Well, that's great. But the East Berliners survived under tyranny. So what you're doing, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But it needs to be a two-front approach. What you're doing to survive while it's happening, but there needs to be a galvanized effort within the population to say the National Guard in Washington, D.C. and the wall that they're building is unacceptable and it needs to be torn down. See, the problem here is
I'm at the point where I want solutions. What are
no, I understand. No, I get it.
There's an analogy. There's an analogy for this, and it was stated by Dr. Louis Pasteur. An ounce of prevention is better than a gallon of cure. And so that's where we got to take it from the beginning. And we need to
but my point is prevent that wall from being built.
Yeah, so that's the prevention.
That's the prevention, right? Because if that wall's built, 40 years of tyranny.
Yeah.
So how do we do that, Paul?
Well, so we meaning the ones that want freedom, want freedom out there. All right. I understand why there were so many people that were upset about the election and the fraud that was going on. All right, I get it. unfortunately, where was the passion when during the summer, when people were mentioning, like I was, about your civil liberties are going to be eroded if you don't step up and actually start protesting at the state houses. Some people did. Michigan did. Arizona. You went to some.
I went to 3 different ones.
But
yeah.
there wasn't the same galvanized force as what was going on post-election with Trump supporters, and that they put their eggs in the wrong basket. They shouldn't have gone for that January 6th. They should have been doing what they were doing almost every day at the state houses during the summer of 2020. So they made a mistake there. And here is my prediction. They're going to make the same mistake again as they are building the wall. They are not going to protest in large masses, and they keep on focused on, well, it was election fraud. Forget about the election fraud. It doesn't matter. It's water on the bridge. What matters is the encroachment of statism and this literal wall that's being built between the people and the ones that are elected to office that are representing the people. That is more important than worrying about Trump. All right. So people need to do what you're doing, Gail, but there needs to be a galvanized force across the nation that isn't measured in tens of millions that say this is not going to continue down the road, because we have seen this in past history in other countries. But we have a party now in office, in power, that is going to continue on these Bio Patriot Act policies that I'm concerned about. So we can't just say, okay, I'm going to trade beans for cookies, right? People need to get out and get active to say, no, we're not going to. Why should people be paying their taxes right now when the government is not representing them, that they're literally spending our taxpayer dollars to put a wall around all the institutions in Washington, D.C. and have hundreds, what is it, about 100,000 or just under 100,000 troops, National Guard in Washington, D.C.? It's almost like Star Wars. It's almost like Star Wars when I don't know all the characters' names, but where the evil senator tricks everybody that there's a coup, and then the soldiers for the Republic end up being on his side, and they were tricked into fighting against the good guys. This is what's happening right now. We have Star Wars in Washington, D.C. Now we're gonna have, tyranny, for decades if we don't step up to the plate. People stepped up to the plate for some billionaire that doesn't really give a damn about you. But people see what's going on with the erosion of our civil liberties, and they're not willing to do anything. Stupid. It's stupid. And I guarantee you, I guarantee you that what's going to happen is that the wall's going to be built up, and it's going to take some band out there named Pink Floyd to say tear down the wall, and some president named Ronald Reagan to say tear it down. But it's going to take decades to get to that point. See, right now, the Achilles heel to the government is starting to protest peacefully, but protesting in tens of millions across the country, saying this needs to stop. But no one's doing it. But people can easily get galvanized for Trump.
I'd like to say that Alex, Farmer Jones, and Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch Project and I all met to discuss how to organize a march months ago. And Farmer Jones and Diamond did at least 2, I can't remember if it was 3 videos educating people on how to do it. We would need more helpers because it's a huge job. So I was looking into it, but I myself cannot, with having 3 kids that I homeschool and everything else that I do and the courses I'm taking, I myself cannot do it by myself to organize that big of a protest. But we came up with a slogan. We talked about some of the logistics. We talked about what we would need, but I cannot do it myself. So if people like you want to start talking about that, I'm happy to start working on that, and I can start working with the other groups here to do something like that. So that's one thing.
Gail,
I think another form of protest.
Gail,
I just want to offer another idea before I lose the idea, please. Just one moment. The other idea I came up with was as we are going around to places and we know that we're going to be rejected, if we all start, and this kind of sounds bad, but if we all start flooding the Civil Rights Division and the Attorney General's office with these notices and claims, they will have to pay attention if they are getting hundreds all across the nation of people submitting these claims state by state. They will need to start paying attention, because that will be a form of protest. We are standing up in that we are filing, and it's on record, all of these claims. And I know that when you go to a store and you are rejected, you have a case. But I know many people are not wanting to take the next step. And it's just a few clicks online, a few clicks of a button to just file a claim. So if we start getting people, and I'm all about trying to come up with solutions, because I already am totally aware of the problems and what we need to do. If we start getting people to do that too, I think that would also help. Now, your turn. What did you want to say, Paul?
Well, I was going to say that I have over 5 million views across YouTube, me screaming, from the top of my lungs the best I can to say, protect your freedoms. And no one
people are viewing that as entertainment. Many people, not all, but many people are not taking action. They're viewing it as entertainment. They get joy out of watching you scream. They go, that's nice. And I like that he's screaming. I enjoy watching that. And I'm not going to take any action. So what I do is people tangible, really small, because you got to break it down to little pieces whenever you're trying to educate people, tangible things that they can do.
Okay, let's do this. Let's use our organizations that we're building now to try to flip this. Let's try to change this around by organizing. We've got a beginnings of an organization with the Freedom Restoration Foundation, and we can change that. We can use that to step it up to make it more. We've got like 544 people on Facebook. There's other groups. We can reach out to these people and say, hey, look, we're looking for volunteers to step up the plate and take action, to be volunteers to do this, that. Now, we might get some takers on this. Look, I was the policy chairman of the National Space Society for 10 years. I got groups of 100 people to go, and the National Space Society is not that big, really. I had groups of 100 people to go to Washington, D.C. and run the halls of Congress once a year. We probably could have done it twice a year. And we got our internal volunteers to organize that stuff. People came and went and did that stuff. Plus, we were quite involved in email, letter writing, and phone call campaigns for any particular political action that came up. We had very good success with that, by the way. Very good success when I was doing that stuff. I don't know what they're doing today, but we had a number of very good success stories. So I think
Greg, the difference is the people that were working at NASA are considered terrorists.
No, this wasn't NASA people. This was grassroots people. But you're right about one.
But you're right about my point. The rocket people weren't put on a terrorist list. All right. So the point that I'm making is that what Gail is saying, she's right. She's 100% right. But what the statists are going to do is say, you know what? These people, the Gaelites, I'll call them the Gaelites. They're rebel rousers, and rebel rousers they're pro Second Amendment. They're pro First Amendment. They're pro Constitution. That sounds like a terrorist. That sounds like a terrorist. And so here's the problem: is that the FBI and the CIA has been given a green light by Biden to hunt us down. And so when you're hunted down, you got to start acting like an animal. And this idea of what the rocket guys did. It's not the same. It is not the same. You, I, Gail, and a lot of other people are considered domestic enemies.
All right. Unfortunately. But you missed part of my point. My point is how we organize ourselves to take action. See, what I'm getting to here is that we can go out to our people that are with us and say, hey, you take action, you organize, get involved, be a leader in your state or the nation, and let's do some of these protests at the state capitals. So what we need to do is figure out what action items need to be done and see if we can get people to step up the plate and do them. Some cases we will, some we won't. But, whether we're being beleaguered or not, we can still take action. We can't just sit back and say, well, chew our fingernails and talk about we're on a hit list. We go out and press our case to the
I could
state.
literally be hit by a drone strike during this recording.
Yeah, we might.
Yeah, I don't think that we should be coming from fear. We're just going to have to, we're totally aware of all these possibilities. We're going to have to move past that fear, start working together and creating little tangible, like to-do items, you know, that you can easily check off and, you know, really easy so that people can start being the change and making a difference.
Gail, I want you, sit down. I want you to imagine it is 1941, all right? And you're a nice Jewish little girl, all right? And your family's getting rounded up.
Well, I do have Jewish in me, but go ahead.
Well, but this is what's happening. This
Those that
is
don't
the
know
beginning.
Paul is Jewish.
You know, what do you do? What do you do? And what my grandmother said was you have to fight. You can't capitulate. Too many people are like saying, we got to do it peacefully. We're going to talk to Congress. And this is important, but there's not enough people saying, you know what? It's pitchforks. Where's the pitchforks? Because here's the problem. Who's the watcher of the watcher? The FBI and the CIA, because of the Patriot Act and the growing expansion of their powers through the Bio Patriot Act that will be written, they are never going to stop hunting us down until someone comes out and says, those agencies are out of control. But every time a president says that, it's either the election is stolen or they're shot in the head. You know, the bottom line is that there's no one watching the watcher. So there needs to be millions of people that show their disgust with what's going on with the wall being built between the people and the government. You know, I maybe I'm a pessimist, but I see this going to hell, literally going straight to hell, and that there isn't going to be, you know, a rainbow at the other end of the road here. I don't see it. Because you couldn't even get during the summer, you couldn't get enough people where their jobs were taken away. They were sheltered in place and all this stuff. You couldn't get them to get out and protest in hundreds of millions. I'm not saying hundreds, in tens of millions. I'm sorry, not hundreds of millions, but in tens of millions. You couldn't do it.
Do something like Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch did with the march against Monsanto, and we need to all organize to do the protest. That's definitely one thing that we need to do. And I'm saying that in addition to that, we also
Monsanto was not the government.
Bits here and there.
Monsanto didn't have the FBI. Monsanto didn't have the CIA. That's the difference.
We have a right to protest, and we need to start gathering. And
I agree with you on that.
There is a reason that people didn't do anything. There was a PSYOP running this country. It was ran by this Q organization where everybody was told for 4 years, don't worry your pretty little heads. We got this taken care of. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's taken care of. We got 200,000 indictments. No, by the way, we already got these guys in prison, which include Tom Hanks. They're in Guantanamo right now and blah, 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 blah. It was all a bunch of BS. None of that stuff ever happened. They never had one indictment. I don't believe it because nobody was arrested. There was no movement toward that. And they kept saying, even the people he said was arrested, they're running around laughing their heads off at everybody. Those guys were never arrested. That was so much bull. But what it did is it psyoped a big portion of our population thinking it's all taken care of. I ain't got to worry about it. You know what? And they're still being psyoped because they're being told, well, don't worry. It's going to be the 4th of March. Or it's going to be this or it's going to be that. And those, the goalpost gets, every time they fail, it's like the prophet who said doomsday's tomorrow morning. They just moved the goalpost. Oh, I misread it. It's 2 days from now. It's 4 days from now. And they keep moving that goalpost. And all the herd is still following it. The heck with that. What a bunch of, don't follow this anymore, because what I tell my people on my channel is everybody's looking for they to take care of, them to take care of. I said, there is no they. You are the they is us. We have to take care of ourselves and quit listening to all this. It's all covered and all taken care of. And you know what? If they're out there to take care of it, well, so what? Big deal. that don't relieve us of our responsibility. So if you still are caught in that psyop, just know you're still responsible, but I ain't buying into that psyop. I was talking about it. A lot of my friends wait like over a year ago, and I got people getting mad at me. I mean, just mad. Well, I got experts that are telling me this is going to happen from the Pentagon and from NSA. I got all these insiders. I'm going, no, it ain't happening. So what's your sources? I said, it don't add up. Common damn sense. All right, well, here it is. I did a video on that not too long ago. I was trying to stay quiet about it because every time I start to pipe up about it, folks are getting mad at me. But I'll just lay it out there, and that's what it is. It's a
I mean, person. Go ahead.
You were in the military, Greg.
Yes.
You know, under what operation or under what authority does the National Guard have to stay there in perpetuity there?
There's two things about the National Guard. One, they operate at the request of their governor unless they get federalized, and then they operate under the president. I think it's really interesting that
But
when
they don't have a governor, do they? They don't have a governor, do they?
well, not DC, but you've got various state National Guards that are being sent up there. Well, actually, the mayor has kind of a gubernatorial over. He actually does have some National Guard, but most of what you've got is state units being sent up there by governors at the request of the federal government. But it should be at the president because the president is commander in chief. So the president can.
So you made a big point here, Gail. So people like you, the Gaelites, can just say, tell the National Guard, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Governor, to come back home. The states have the power for this wall being built in DC. The governors have the power to prevent this, is what Greg's saying.
Yes. Now, while we have Governor Ducey, remember I was trying to help out with the recall. Until 2022, he's still around. So, you know, with Governor Ducey, I don't foresee that he's going to do that. I'd like it.
Well, I don't see Governor Cuomo doing it either. You know?
That's good information. It's good to know that. There are other people that are trying to run for 2022 that I'm aware of. And when that point in time comes, maybe they can do something.
I mean, literally, I'm assuming all three of us have seen Washington, D.C. pre-January 6th, right? The last time I was in Washington, D.C., I think was 2013 or 2014. The way this is going, we are never going to see Washington, D.C. like we remember. Unless someone steps up to the plate and says, take down those gates, take down those barricades, and National Guard, go home. But where are the senators and the representatives saying this? See, what's happening is the same thing that happened right after 9/11. People were in fear. The fear right now is those domestic terrorists named, you know, Trump supporters, and you know, and now we gotta wall off everything. You know, where are they? Why aren't our representatives saying this is enough is enough? You know, what's the chances of another January 6th happening? Like slim to none. You know, and you don't even need a wall. And also, I just
scared. They've got them scared, but why in the world weren't they scared in the summer with all that stuff going? You know, the president tried to federalize, according to his constitutional responsibility, National Guard to protect the White House when he was told they were going to storm the White House, and the mayor and several other people in the on the federal side were opposed to it, including the chief of staff, General Mark Miley. Now, a lot of people think Mark, you know, all these generals were on Trump's side and we're going to do this. Excuse me, the very top general was against him from the get-go. I mean, you know, that's why this psyop is so ridiculous. You know, you got to look at the deep state and who all's deep state. We can see that now. We really now absolutely know every person that is and is not deep state. That is clear. All the masks are off. We know which governors are, Ducey and Cuomo. We know which congressmen, which senators, which representatives are in both parties. The masks are off. Everybody's played their cards. You know where they stand now. At least we know now.
Yeah, but the deep state is the state. That's the problem now.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to be like silent actors in the shadows, you know, pulling strings. Now they have uncloaked. All right, they are the state. There is no such thing as the deep state anymore. There is such a thing as no staters like us, you know, but there's the deep state is in control. So I don't know how, because they're in control, who's watching the watcher? That's the problem. We don't have a balance of power. Checks and balances is eroding.
Yeah, they're gone. So it's Gail, I'm gonna have to watch out, right?
I was going to say, like, in a weird way, it's almost as if we have to go through all of this worldwide to start waking people up and making them more aware and starting to get people to stand up more for their rights and freedoms. I mean, I wish it were not the case, but I'm noticing that it really is waking people up, and it is exposing all these people. I mean, like Greg just said, it's really easy to see who's who and who's doing what. So I think that we can use this, and with all those little pieces that I mentioned earlier, I think that we can start standing up bit by bit. Each person can do a part. And I think that we also should organize a protest like you're suggesting, Paul, and I'd be willing to work with you on that. So if you want to utilize the fact that Greg and I are doing the...
I think we should call it the pitchfork protest.
Actually, I have a wonderful name that Diamond and Farmer Jones and I came up with. You know what, though? I'll save it because just in case.
The tar and feather protest?
When we're not recording, I'll share it with you. And I'll share some of the information that we discussed when we're off air. We can discuss it.
I'll tell you, I'm concerned about where this country is going. And you know, you think that people would galvanize now. But why? They're slowly becoming comfortably numb, you know, it's to change that momentum, to reverse that momentum, to change that energy that's going against us is going to be difficult, and it's getting harder by the day.
I think people need hope. They need inspiration. Some people are getting burnt out. Some people are giving up. They need hope. They need inspiration. They need little baby steps. You ever watch, what's that movie with Bill Murray with the baby step to this, baby step to that?
What we need in this country is a peaceful protest in the tens of millions. That's a TED offensive against all of the different state houses.
You'd have a Nerf rocket protest. Nerf rockets.
That's cute, Greg.
I can't really hurt anybody, but hey, they do lunch.
Nice to have one of those. Those are cute.
Yeah, I just, you know, I want to go back to a time that is not just before the crisis, before the Wuhan crisis, but a time before 9/11. Because in my mind, because of my age, you know, my generation, I would say that the inflection point in the erosion of our constitutional freedoms happened on 9/11. You know, some other people would say, depending on if they're older or not, or a different generation, they may say JFK's assassination. But something is changing in our government. You know, the way the government relates to its people, that is becoming scary, and anyone that's going to start questioning during this period of time is going to be considered a terrorist, a domestic enemy. You know, I'm surprised that these National Guards members are actually they actually do what they're being told. You know, I understand that they need to, you know, respect orders and chain of command and all that, but for them to say to those National Guard members, you need to protect these buildings against the people, you know, and if you need to fire at them, I think goes against their actual oath to this country. But see, it's spun in a way. The people that are in power are going to say, okay, those are domestic terrorists, the Gaileites. All right. The reality of the situation is the domestic enemy are the ones that are the deep staters that Greg is talking about. Unfortunately, the ones that are in power are the deep staters. So they're always going to frame it. Whenever you're trying to take away their power, they're always going to frame it that we are the enemy. And it's unfortunate that we have members of the armed services that are willing to obey the command, which I think in the Nuremberg trials proved that you can't follow a chain of command if it's illegal, which happened during World War II. You know, you can't, even if Hitler said, kill all the people, you know, kill, you know, do ethnic cleansing, it doesn't mean that it's right and that you should do it.
That is something our military is trained in. They know that they're not supposed to take an order if it's not legal. Now, there may be some quabbling about what is or is not legal. And I also think that members of the military and National Guard are going to be very reluctant to turn on their own. And you may see the military split if all this stuff really breaks into a heat. I don't think everybody will go along with it. So it's going to be, that would be a very ugly situation. But also, it should be known that the members of the military don't take an oath to a person. They take an oath to the Constitution itself. Now, a lot of them may not understand what that means. And so hopefully we can help educate that the Constitution is all about the Constitution. Every fabric, word, phrase in this document is about one thing: limiting the power of government. It is about ensuring that people have freedom. And yet people are taking it and twisting it against itself and using it against the people that were supposed to serve the, what's this say up here at the very beginning here? We the people, right? We the people, not we the government, we the elite, we that are behind a wire wall. No, we that live in the halls of marbles, you know, marble halls of DC. No, that's not what it's about. It's about the people. And you know, we hope it's up to us to help educate people. We can do that. We've got the voices, and that includes members of the National Guard and Army. I've been in the Army and I've been in the National Guard. I've been in both. I served almost 4 years in the Army. I joined for 3 and extended 9 months. So it was almost 4 years. And I went in the National Guard for 2 years after that. So I understand that. Now, when a guard is federalized, supposing the commander-in-chief is the president. So I don't know, but the states do have certain abilities to send and recall. I don't know what their line of demarcation is, but I do know that Governor Abbott had said, hey, you know, if I'd known this, I wouldn't have sent my guys up there, and don't expect me to send them back, you know. So there is some reluctance at the state level to participate in some of these things. So there are many things that we can do. Like you said, you know, we ought to be organizing protests. We ought to be making our voice heard. We can also do letter writing and phone call campaigns. We can make sure that we're heard in many ways, because everybody can't go with their feet. We can also, you know, we can petition for sanctuary states. That's one thing that we're looking at right now in the RFR, to have a, you know, a Bill of Rights sanctuary state group. And you know, there is the 10th Amendment, certain other things which haven't been too much recognized by the federal government, but we can push for that. We can pursue it. And then some states are going farther. Texas is possibly going to consider letting their people vote on whether to succeed from the union or not. And if Texas does go, you can bet a lot of states will go with them, because they're going to say, wait, without you in this union is going to slide hard over in the other direction. I don't want to be part of that. So they'll have a large following, I would predict, if that happens. Now, you know, it's sad we've come to this in this country. It's got to do with the divisions that we have and how it's being played. And we're being divided by those that want to create a great reset, basically. You know, there are people above and beyond all of this that are playing us and are laughing at us. To them, you know, if we wipe each other out, you know, and squabbles, they would just think that's funny, because we're the biggest impediment to global control, to globalism, to some big global gulag that they like to set up. What they're really aiming for is a feudal society that has a permanent caste of elites and then a permanent caste of peasants, and peasants cannot move up. They're trying to knock out all the ladders, middle class, where we've been able to move upward into this elite field. And it's strange, some of the people up here in this elite field were down here and did move up, but now if they're up here, they're happy to kick that ladder out. And then there's a lot of them just think they're in the elite field. Maybe there's a little bit higher levels. So it's sad, but you know, another thing that people need to think about is with this digital currency you're talking about and social credit systems, they're going to work hand in hand. Because what they're talking about is, and they're already talking about this just from your credit cards. They're already talking about this, is watching what you buy and how you buy it. And that information would go to the government, the likes, you know, whoever's in control of the various federal agencies today. You know, we had an unholy triumphant between, or the whole unholy trinity of Comey, Brennan, and Clapper. You know, we've got the same kind of, and those three mouths are still wagging today. So, you know, we're seeing the same kind of thing come upon us today, where they will spy on the Americans. They'll spy on the campaigns of. They will actually illegally use the full weight of the federal government to spy on a campaign that's from the other party coming against them. They've already done it once, and yeah, they'll do it again. And that's already been shown. That's known. That's not a conspiracy. That happened, and they use the full weight of the federal government to do that. And is that legal? You know, what is that? But that's okay if they do it. You know, it's crazy. It's insane what's going on right now. But we're
at a point. We're at a point, Greg, that people need to step up that understand history and that can articulate it not only through voice but through the pen and paper. And a new declaration needs to be a declaration of grievance, not a declaration of independence. A declaration of grievance needs to be written and given to Congress, but it will not have any teeth unless there are tens of millions of individuals that are behind that document. This is where the Second Amendment is on our side. We need to not have fractured militias, not a bunch of group of people that are outraged against the government. What we need is a well-regulated militia all across the country that is adhering to a congressional Congress that we create. And that congressional Congress has ability for taxation within the individuals that want to be for trying to protect the Union, and the militia that's well regulated, that has generals, that has corporals and all this stuff, and they're well trained, and they have provisions that are provided by the Congressional Congress. Once that is set, then the founding fathers of this new republic write the Declaration of Grievance. The Declaration of Grievance is given to Congress. And in that Declaration of Grievance talks about rolling back all these things that we've been talking about. And the elimination or the severe truncation of the CIA and the FBI. If they are not willing to do that, then it is in the same vein as what our founding fathers did with the Declaration of Independence.
Most of that document right there is a declaration of grievance.
Right. But it has to have the same themes, but it has to be written in a modern vernacular.
King George was a generous Sunday school teacher compared to what we're facing today.
Well, that's true, but that's because of drones, and the technology. But it's in a bioweapon that's after us. But the Declaration of Grievance can't be issued by tens or hundreds or just a few thousand here and there. It has to have teeth. And the only way to have teeth is it has to have a military backing, a well-regulated militia, not a bunch of yahoos that have, hunting rifles and they, hunt, 3 days out of the year. I'm talking about conscripting a militia that's around the country, but is beholden to the Congressional Congress that is formed. And that body is what drafts the actual Declaration of Grievance. This creates the beginnings of the dialogue that needs to take place between, I'm not sure where he's going, the dialogue between the people and the government. Now, if the government says no, then it sets in motion. Now we have force where we can say we are going to have our own community that is not taxed by the federal government. Very similar to creating reservations that are, for the indigenous people. So these are the things that, to answer Gail's, question about what do we do? This is This is a kinetic option that goes hand in hand with the other things that Gail said. But the declaration of grievance won't mean anything unless there are tens of millions of people that are behind it. And it's not like sign a petition. I'm talking about well-regulated militia that is bound by the Congressional Congress that's created before they talk to Congress directly. But that's how I see this needs to go. But I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. You have Michigan militia that wants to run their own show. You have the Oath Keepers that want to run their own show. So you have a lot of militia types that have egos that aren't willing to stand down and provide their group as an element of a larger militia that's run by a by a congressional Congress. And but until that happens, we the people won't be able to present the grievance to Congress. I'm working on the premise. I think it's a safe premise that as we move forward through this biological crisis and the encroachment of statism, that Congress will not listen to us. They will hear, but they won't listen. They hear. They'll hear the griping. They'll see the letters, but they won't listen. And because of that, that's why we need a congressional Congress to actually present something to them in an official manner that has military backing. Because they're just going to say, if it doesn't have military backing, they're going to say, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like a bunch of people that signed a petition. It doesn't matter. But when you have a well-regulated militia, that's the key. It can't be a bunch of yahoos. It has to be, it has to be well-regulated. And then it's under the Constitution. See, the problem here is that we aren't organized enough to be kinetic if the government doesn't address our grievances. That's the problem. See, we're fractured.
So listen, so there's two ways to what you're talking about. One is if enough states were to organize that the states could collectively marshal their national guards, following sanctuary states or whatever. Two would be a continental Congress, not a, this Congress you're talking about would be a continental Congress. It would be a government within the United States. It's like a refugee government, kind of like Vichy France, right? So it would be something like that. It would be a continental Congress. It would be a government in exile. So I don't, that would be interesting. But you've got to have some clear leaders to organize something like that for the people to follow it. It would take, like what happened when we had our original organization of such things back in the 1700s. We had a number of founding fathers. It wasn't one or two. There was quite a number of them that banded together and put out things like the book Common Sense, Poor Richard's Almanac, and such and so forth. We had quite a few people that were out there in the forefront championing this stuff. So but they were in league with each other. They at least met and got a mind to pull it off. Right now, there's a whole bunch of people going in different directions.
The reason why I said constitutional Congress is that it's under the Constitution. This provision allows us to do this. The Continental Congress was because we were colonies, right? Well, we're not colonies anymore. This is different. I'm trying to run in the same vein as what our founding fathers did. That's why I say it's not a Declaration of Independence, it's a Declaration of Grievance. It's not a Continental Congress, it's a Constitutional Congress.
All right, so how does that,
There's a reason
how do you differentiate that from the Congress that we've got, because it's elected? So we've got an elected Congress right now. But they're mostly career politicians that are deep state people. We can see that. So how do you do?
Because the thing is that we are the will of the people, and the government is not listening. So therefore, our constitutional Congress is more legitimate, and not their illegitimate, fake vote Congress that they have.
And we have to elect an alternate Congress.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that's given. Yeah, of course. That's exactly what the Continental Congress did.
We could have a fire the mall campaign. Don't vote for anybody that's in office right now. Fire every damn one of them. That might get gain traction now.
I think people that are definitely in the political realm and organizing needs to start thinking in these terms. In a constitutional Congress or a continental Congress, and there's a declaration of grievance, but it has to have teeth, and that teeth is where you have some sort of, military backing, militia backing. But there's these grievances are real. I mean, it's not asking. In my mind, it's not asking too much to say, let's go to a pre 9/11 day, where all the surveillance on its citizens, goes back to, a pre 9/11 day. Why do we need all this? Why are we paying for all this? We can't afford it. I mean, you look at the economic issues, but what it is that the watcher makes a statement. I don't like these people. I don't like Galites. I don't like these people that want to teach their children against things that we are saying in the public schools. That woman is dangerous. People that follow her are dangerous. See, this is the problem with the government that we have right now. As we have gone 20 years since 9/11? This is 20 years in the making. Now enough is enough. And that's why we need to have people that are pen to paper, but also organize. And it's not like organized for a Tupperware party. It's organized to have a well-regulated militia.
So let's be clear so everybody understands. We're not calling for a war or a revolution.
No.
And what we're calling for is working within the system, but doing it with resolve, resolute way. To using the system to our side. That's what he's really talking about. So a lot of people will misinterpret this, boss. So I just think it's important to lay that out there so people really understand that we're talking about using the system to gain back the freedoms that the system was created for.
Right. If there is a habitualness of the government not representing its people, a large section of the people, then why are they still taxing those individuals? My thinking is this: if you don't have representative government, then you shouldn't be taxed. No taxation without equal representation. Well, when you don't have representation, then why am I being taxed? Therefore, we should have our own reservation, our own nation, our own reservation, where we are somewhat detached. We can have commerce between the United States and the reservation, but
be careful, they'll put us all in Oklahoma.
Well, no. Well, I mean, like you said, though, there's two avenues to this. One avenue is the actual governor is doing this, but I don't think that the governors, because they're captured, they're compromised.
Most are.
Right. So, some of them, did, things that they shouldn't have done that was recorded. They're on the take, financially with a certain lobbying group or a certain company or whatever. But not a lot of governors will be on the side of what we're saying. That's why I'm saying that the other option is that you can't lean on the governor, even if he's aligned with you from a political party perspective. The end result will be the same. They're not going to alleviate the grievance. Remember what the grievance is. Go back to a pre-9/11 day and prevent the Bio Patriot Act and the forced vaccines and all the over intrusion of statism in our lives. That's what the grievance is. This is rational. This is not like, tear down the government. No, what it is that the government isn't listening to the people. You're talking about tens of millions of people that it's not listening to, if not 100 million or 150 million. So it's a lot of people that this is happening to. So this is why it's important to get under the rules of the Constitution, get organized, and have teeth behind a declaration of grievance.
So what role will you play in that, Paul? To what extent can we break this down to bite-sized pieces that people can actually do?
Well, I'm gonna buy a white horse, and a revolutionary hat, and I'm gonna I'm gonna march down Pennsylvania Avenue, but
See that? Can you record that?
I was joking. I was joking.
Start
I
on
know,
Wall
I'm
Street.
joking back
Start on
with you.
Wall Street, by the way.
I was, I was joking, but the
I'm
thing
joking
is,
back.
but the thing is that I think that we all have an important part to play in this. And I think, honestly, that I don't think there's anyone out there that I've heard that is articulating the declaration of grievance like I am to go back to a pre-9/11 day, because what I see with the Bio Patriot Act. So where I see myself in this is drafting that document, but not just drafting a document, because the problem with Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, he wasn't willing to fight. He was willing to draft. He was willing to write documents. He wasn't willing to fight. So, what was learned with Washington and Hamilton was that there is a time to write, there's a time to convey an argument, and there's a time to fight. And I think that's why it needs to be prepared. You need to prepare and give teeth to a document. If the government was smart, they would start to listen to the grievance and roll back to a pre-9/11 day. Or what's going to probably happen is that there's going to be a declaration of not just of grievance, but there'll be a declaration of secession, and that we will no longer be taxed by that government.
That may be coming. That may be coming.
Yeah, I kind of sense that's coming, Paul.
That may come first.
The thing that bothers me, Gail, is that my great-great-grandfather fought in the Civil War, and he was on the Union side. So the idea was to keep the Union together, not to separate it. But I'm starting to sound like a Confederate. But even though my ancestry is from the Union side, this is serious, because if we do not have these grievances addressed, then we're going down that road of statism that we were talking about early on. And that isn't, Diamond thinks that the world is going to, go through a big shake up, in the next few years, or maybe a decade, but no longer. I don't believe that. I don't think that's going to happen in the terms that he's saying. There may be some geological or solar type situation that happens, but I don't think it's going to be a complete catastrophe. All right. I take it from a religious point of view, why I think that. I believe, and there's probably more evidence on my side of this, that if statism takes hold, it's going to last for a few decades. Not statism takes hold, solar flare, or some sort of cosmic event, and then there's a complete reset in 10 years. I don't believe that. Because if that's the case, then we shouldn't even have this conversation and just try to enjoy our lives and bake cookies. But the thing is that the probability is high that if the grievances are not addressed, that we will have statism and a totalitarian regime for the next 4 decades.
Oh, it could be worse with the advance of technology, as we're moving into a world with Neuralink.
Yeah, right.
You might just jack everybody in. You may never get out.
Well, this is the whole matrix theory, that eventually technology is going to just, you'll be living in a virtual world, where, you have 72 virgins, but I don't.
Well, why, once they got you in, why do they need to put the resources into pleasuring you with their software and their systems? They're more likely to just turn you into a worker ant. That's the most likely, or use you as a battery of sorts of DNA computer process.
Right. I think it's going to go down the road of computer processing.
Yeah, so,
think about it. You hook up, let's say 10 million people. That's far more computer power than any supercomputer.
Yeah. So that's, they'll use you, and if they can't use you, they'll get rid of you. I mean, you'll have to be of use to them to exist. If you're not a useful slave, you will not exist at all. So that's where you're heading, and you won't even know who you are. You're going to be a mind-numbed robot. You won't know, you won't even have any consciousness of being a person. They'll take all it away from you, ultimately. You won't realize they're slipping you into that, but it just happened.
We need it goes down to, do we have determination? Do we have, I mean, what's one of the key themes of our country? Self-determination, self-determination. You know, and that when you start going down that road where the state tells you what to do, it tells you how to raise your children, how to educate them. You know, you can't read that book. I mean, literally in public schools now, they don't read 1984. So they're setting in motion a whole generation that's going to say, nanny state, this is what I want, because they haven't talked about the negative aspects of nanny states.
Living wage. You can just sit on the couch and play computer games forever and you'll be paid. And this whole idea of the Great Reset, you know, they're putting out this idea, I'll own nothing. I will have no privacy and I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Right. Well, you know, I believe that, you know, it's about self-determination. You know, you should be able to plan what you want to do with your life and try to the best of your ability with the skills that you're endowed and you develop to pursue happiness. You know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is about self-determination and not having the state telling you how to live your life. So this is what was happening even back in the 1700s, when the colonists couldn't manufacture what they wanted to do. They had to buy everything from England. You know, so and so that was the beginnings where they said, no, we can make our own things. We can, you know, we want our own industry. We want our own businesses, you know, not sanctioned by the king. And this is what's happening, is that we're going back to the king, that, you know, sanctioning what we can or cannot do. You know, there's going to be a time in the near future if we do not galvanize and have a document of grievance given to Congress. What's going to happen is people, because I don't have any kids, there's going to be people in Congress saying, Gail, your children no longer can be taught at home. You have to put them in a sanctioned school that Congress has funded. All right. And we are going to say, we are only going to let them read Karl Marx. You can't read George Orwell, only Karl Marx. And you can't, you know, it's communism now. It's not about free market capitalism, because free market capitalism in the state's eyes is negative. See, eventually you're not going to be able, I'm speaking kind of in hyperbole to make a point, but eventually there's going to be a point where a parent will not be able to decide how they want to raise their child. And it goes against what is stated about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You should be able to determine what.
A lot of Mormons will be up in arms about that around here in Arizona, because a lot of people homeschool and a lot of them are Mormons out here. So they will be up in arms fighting that tooth and nail, and fighting about, you know, their religion and
well, think about it like this. Who are the ones that are supporting this ultra-liberalism, this move towards statism? There are individuals that are primarily against religion. So there's going to be a point in time where they're going to say religion, that's this old thing that people did, you know, that you know, they shouldn't be doing that anymore, because some of the things that people practice in their religion may be against what the state wants you to do. We don't want you to donate your money to your community, to help your community out. No. The state will provide the funds if they're sanctioned activities. See, they're gonna push out religion.
In a state of society, they want the state to be the top ultimate authority. Any god is in competition with it. That's why China is opposed to all other religions, and it's stomping their rapid growing Christian religion, the Falun Gong, the Muslims. They're stomping on everybody. They're stomping on the people in Tibet, and will do so more so here in the near future. So that's why they do that. It's because they want the state to be the ultimate authority, the ultimate go-to, It's all about the state. It's not about the individual. It's not about religion. It's only about the state.
Mhm.
I understand all of that, and I feel like we need to still uphold what's in our Constitution, you know, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And I want to still see people getting these bite-sized chunks accomplished so that we can try to avoid everything that Paul is seeing down the pipeline. I still think that we have a chance, and I want to still give people hope and inspiration and at least try to avoid what they are trying to do.
I see it as
I
a
want us
two-pronged.
to all work together to accomplish that. I want us to put our great minds together. I've had so many visions of all of us and the people that we are acquaintances or friends with that we go on shows of getting together and working together. We all have brilliant minds and pieces of the puzzle and working to accomplish, whether it be a protest or the letter of grievance. In all of these things, I think that we need to somehow work together. What did you want to say, Paul?
Well, what popped in my mind was what happened in the 50s with the Dalai Lama. The Tibetans were peace-loving individuals that did not want to fight against the Chinese. Well, the Dalai Lama has been in exile now, and there's been, atrocities and killing and the murdering of Tibetans and the destruction of their culture. I mean, literally, they're going through something similar to what the Jews went through. They're almost extinct. So the point that I'm making is that it's a two-pronged approach. There is these bite-sized, hopeful what to do at the grassroots level, but it has to elevate into a document that is about trying to having our grievances addressed, and it has to have teeth. So it can't be just a well-regulated militia. It can't be just a document, and it can't be just a grassroots movement. Or what to do, with these little cottage industry kind of things. They all work together. They all have.
We all need to work together. So we need to start planning. How are we going to do that? Because we've had coming to these conclusions.
We're probably morphing into an internal meeting more than a show here.
Well, I personally think, just to answer the question really quickly without going into too much detail, I think that there needs to be a group, a meeting amongst all, quote, militias across the country to come to the idea that they are part of this Constitutional Congress or Continental Congress. I think Constitutional Congress is framed better, but then you're testing the water to understand where the egos are. There's going to be some people that say, "No, I'm not going to do that." There's going to be some people that say that makes a lot of sense, and those are the people that we want. Then, once you have recruited enough people, so you bring those people in, you accrete those militias, then you add to it. Then you say, we want able-bodied individuals start to train. Do push-ups, start working out, start running around, start learning how to use a weapon. All right. And then it's well-regulated where you have these, you have individuals that have military experience that say, okay, these are the generals, these are, the lieutenants and yada, yada, yada. All right. And how to organize all that. And then the Constitutional Congress starts to draft the document of grievance. So the first step really needs to be a coming of the minds of what's already been. We don't want to invent the wheel again. We want to work with what is already there, if it's usable. I suspect that probably 30 or 40% of the militias out there have egos and they wouldn't want to be a part of something much larger. But I could be wrong. But if there's 70% there or 60% that we could work with and build off of, that would be something that would help with having our grievances addressed.
Paul, you got to bear something in mind. During the 1700s, there was a Continental Army, and there were the irregulars. Were both. Yeah. So they both coexisted.
Yeah, but so it's reaching out to the militia, the Michigan militia, the Arizona militia. You have a militia, right? Is there an Arizona militia?
Gail must be the head with all the Gail lights.
I know. I'm serious. So is there? I mean, is there?
I'll put it this way. I would assume that there are a lot of people that are working out and learning how to use guns very well and practicing.
Yeah, but the thing is it organized in a more, more, is it individuals or is it more organized?
I would assume that there are probably groups of people, but they're all, like you were saying, with the ego and separated. They're all separated, probably. That would be my assumption. I'm making an assumption. I don't know.
But here's the key thing. With the right kind of leadership, if people were to stand up and say, guys, we got to stand together and we got to do this constitutionally, and we got to exercise this appropriately and show the right kind of leadership and prove that they have the resolve, a lot of people would step in behind them because there's a vacuum. There's no leadership at the top. All we had was Mr. T, and I don't think he's going any kind of direction like that. I think he probably was the head of that deception in the first place, possibly. I don't want to take a lot of errors for that. But, it's quite possible. He was a billionaire. He was from New York. I mean, gosh, guys, he was friends with the Clintons before all this started. So I don't know. I've had my reservations. He threw Julian Assange under the bus. So what's going on there? There's a lot of weird things that's not adding up to me in that regard either. So,
he was on the cover of Playboy too.
Huh?
He was on the cover of Playboy too in the 80s.
Well,
that's a line that isn't that's a checkbox, for success in this world.
Hey, maybe that was it. So, I won't fault him for that. And I won't fault him for marrying an ex-porn star. Who am I to judge? But, hey, look, he may be fine. He may be all right. I'm just not wanting to throw all my faith behind any one person. I think that we got to be careful with that. And that's my whole point there. And maybe he'll come out and be a leader in some fashion. And, maybe he'll do the social media thing or something else. I don't know. Well, I just say, keep your eyes wide open, head on a swivel. That's what I tell my followers all the time, because we don't know what's coming at us. And we have to be careful with not following a cult leader, but we need leadership. And that's the
or a dynasty, not to follow a dynasty.
Oh,
because
no.
they're saying, Don Jr. or Ivanka. No.
Yeah, we don't need dynasties lead to royalty. We don't need royalty at all. What we need is people. That's what our thankfully, George Washington had the good sense not to serve a third term because he never wanted to be royalty. They offered him to be a king. He stood against that. So we got to stand up for what the freedoms were that they fought for. He fought too hard for those freedoms to just grab everything. So fortunately, he had a sense of goodness in him somewhere, even though the day all the kids are taught how evil he was and how evil all our founding fathers were, but none of us are perfect. We all have blemishes and stains in our lives. And maybe that's part of how we get people out of all this blackmail they're caught up in it. Say, okay, you know what? We can forgive that if you'll stand up right now and do what's right. Maybe we need to be a little bit more forgiving and understanding because they've got a lot of people blackmailed into their system, as you pointed out earlier. And like I said, none of us are perfect. We've all got, we're all human beings. So we've got our stains, we've got our blemishes, we've got our warts and knots and whatever else. And but we got
with that. I totally agree with that, except for Nancy Pelosi.
Well, you just painted her earlier as the senator in Star Wars that became the what was the character that was in charge of everything there? The first
right.
Limper. Yeah, she must be. She's become the limper. What was his name? Palantine or something like that. Palantine.
Yeah. Right. It is weird though how Star Wars is kind of predicting our future in a way. George Lucas is kind of amazing in terms of those terms. Maybe he's just tapping into just human nature, and this is just the natural progression of human nature.
Well, he studied a lot of history to come up with those stories. He would read a lot.
Well, yeah, and it's reflecting the way he named things, like the Seth lords, Set, from Egypt. You know,
Right.
the Set Lord, the Lord Set, Seth Lords. I mean, come on, he was a lot of these names he was playing off, and also the source of energy that gave people their powers, their psychic powers, the connecting to the force was their organelles. And it sounded a whole lot like mitochondria, which is our energy organelles within our cells, which you inherit from your mom, by the way. So that it sounded a whole lot like that. You know, in fact, they called them almost the same thing, just a little divvy. I forgot the exact word they use in Star Wars, but you know, it's kind of uncanny how a lot of that does play in. And you know, he might have been just a little bit prophetic. He might have seen things, but then again, if you're a student of human nature, it's like that whole thing where uh, where the Senator Palatine, I believe it was, when he took over, you know, and the Senate had him vote, you know, and this is how freedom ends, or whatever they said. Uh, that's, you know, that's a lot of parallels with the kind of things we see today in human nature in general. Human nature is the same today as it was in the days of the Greeks and the Romans. We like to think we're better, but they studied human nature and governance more than we did. So actually, in those respects, outside the technological whiz bangs we got, they were smarter. They were actually ahead of us in understanding these things. So,
Well, like the Jedi's, I think, are the Jews, and the stormtroopers were the SS. You know, I see parallels of World War II.
He did study that as well, Paul. I mean, it's been a long time, but I studied a lot about films when I was way younger. So he did look into all these different historical documents and texts, and he did pull pieces from all over.
Paul, does that make you Yoda?
Maybe that's my position in this world, is being Yoda. I don't know. I don't know.
I might could be Chewbacca.
You know,
Am I Leia? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
then I'd have to be Han Solo.
Fix my hair.
Leia. Oh, that's why we're all Gailites, because Leia's our princess. Gail's our princess, Princess Gail.
Well, there might be some of that in my DNA, but we'll save that for another show. Anyhow.
I mean, Gail, you know, you're an artist. You know, you have artistic ability, all right?
I do.
That flag there, tell me as an artist what you see. This is important. I think that you'll hint on how I feel about it.
I see a bright light coming across.
Mm-hmm.
I see hope in that bright light, but I see the shadow of darkness all around it, but there's still this bright light of hope within, and it's coming over the stars and the stripes going on the diagonal. But then there's still that darkness kind of creeping over from every side. What do you see?
It's underground, and it's just getting a glimmer of light. And then we're going underground. The real country, what it really means, the Constitution and all the things that we were talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not having statism. But these individuals, like us, are going underground. And that we're waiting for that opportunity, that of one day, that shining light, to be able to climb out of our holes and be able to, you know, to live our lives like a pre 9/11 day. So that's what I see, is that we're waiting for that opportunity to see that flag in its full glory, in full light, not being shadowed by being underground. And where this country is going, less and less light is going to be shined on that flag. So we need to stop statism. Statism is it's very monochromic. It's monolithic. It doesn't have the three colors and all of its meaning, because that's holding back. That's about individuality. But through individuality, we are one nation, right? Well, the state doesn't want individuality. They want the state to be paramount, not the individual. So this is where this country is at this moment. We have some light on the flag, but it's going to diminish over time if we don't do something about it. We are starting to go underground because of statements by Nancy Pelosi saying, well, if you're a Trump supporter, you must be a terrorist. Or walls being built in DC, where they are literally, they're physically increasing the distance between government officials and the people they represent. So this flag's been on my shows and stuff, and I've been with Greg and too, for a while. This has been on for almost a year, a little less, maybe about 10 months or 11 months. But this is where our future is if we don't do something about it. So that's what I see. But you're close, that it's in darkness. It's in darkness. It's underground. We are moving underground.
There's still that light and that ray of hope.
Well, yeah, there is hope there. I mean, that's the important piece, and hopefully people that listen to this show actually get something out of what we're saying and be that shining light to make sure that flag is in its full glory instead of being hidden for a future generation to rise up and have a better life. See, I'm afraid that, it's the Iron Curtain, that famous phrase by Churchill, the Iron Curtain going across Europe, I feel something very similar is happening. Maybe not at the international level, like what was going on between the Western world and Russia or the Soviet Union. But something similar is happening in this country.
We need an analogy of language. See, that's a good meme. That word, that term, the Iron Curtain. We do have something like it. We need to coin a phrase that fits it as it's happening today. We need a similar phrase to put out there to drop as a meme and let it metastasize and spread out through this country. That's what we need. So to set people in the right frame of mind about what's actually taking place. So they go, yeah, that's it. Sometimes that's what it takes to help wake people up, to get them to see things. So a phrase like that is actually quite useful. And, Churchill was quite the character. So, Iron Curtain, maybe not that, maybe, but, can we what phrase would fit today's what's happening? What do you think? Let's kick that around. What do you, maybe they have to be kicked around a bit, but I think that is.
I don't know. I mean, I've been focused on the idea of the Berlin Wall being built, and it's the early days of it, where it was just barbed wire and wood, wood planks. That's where it is right now. But if we don't stop,
wire and chain link right now.
Yeah,
but DC wall, the DC wall.
Right. There's, the government is definitely creating a wall, but a lot of these, when I was young, one of the first radio songs that I remember listening to was actually Pink Floyd, From the Wall. So my thinking is just that it has to be framed World War II, or just post World War II.
Oh, see,
the dawning of the Cold War, and how people's lives were starting to erode. I mean, do you really think that if things are going the way the Democratic Party wants to do, you really think that the average citizen is going to be richer, or do you think the average citizen is going to be poorer? Right, well, exactly. So this is the beginnings. I mean,
go look at Venezuela. They wanted economic equality in Venezuela, and they got it. They're all abject poverty.
Right. So right when the Berlin Wall did fall, and they could see what was going on in Eastern Europe, in East Berlin, and in Eastern Europe, in what was going on, when the satellite countries started falling from the Soviet Union, and they looked at the Western world, because there was decades of communism, you could see the differences between the economic systems and which one was more prosperous. Obviously, the Western side. Another perfect example from an economic experiment would be what's going on with North Korea and South Korea. South Korea is vibrant. North Korea can't put its lights on. So this is where our country is going. We're going to lose our prowess, our manufacturing prowess. You know,
What do you have?
they're you know, the Biden is going to undo a lot of the gains that was going on in manufacturing in the United States under Trump. And it's going to go right back to China, but it's going to go back quicker, you know? So I don't know. We are probably looking at the decline of the United States because it's these globalists, they want the 21st century China. But what's stopping it is that idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and individuality in this country. They need to destroy that. They need to destroy our individuality. And then they can usher in the 21st century China. The 21st century China is going to turn us into a second world power.
Oh, that's what they want. I mean, that's the globalist dream. I mean, that's what David Rockefeller said that himself. He said China is the example of how to run the world.
Yeah, but Greg, I mean, you're a smart guy. I don't understand why Rockefeller, even though he made all this money because of extracting oil out of Pennsylvania and Texas, you know, why did he have such a hard-on against the United States? You know, why are the Bill Gateses and the Rockefellers and the Zuckerbergs and the, you know, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Why are all of them, the Ford Foundation and all the.
I've got an answer for that. It is this. See, it's not really the players that we think it is. What it all is about, they want globalism, but they want to set it up in such a way that they have a feudal system where they are at the top and nobody else can rise up and challenge them. They're wanting to kick out all the ladders, all the ways for people down here to rise up. They want to clearly separate it. So they would be the lords and masters in a high-tech system over the workers that they allow to exist down here, the resources. I mean, if you're down here, you're like a cattle, a pig, or a chicken, maybe a chicken. You're not nothing more to them than a chicken. And you serve at their whim. That's where it's ultimately going. But they can't put that system in effect as long as there's a nation that has the freedoms and the philosophies that we have here in the United States. So that's why they turn against it, because we have so many people in this country that believe in freedom. We have so many people in this country that believe in a greater creator, something that's not the state, the government, a higher power, because they want to be the be all end all. And with their technology and transhumanism, they want to be literally the gods. And they think they will be gods and that everybody else will be nothing. And that's the way they want it. But to get there, they got to crack this egg and they got to break who we are here so that we're not who we are today. And the last hope for freedom has often been said to be the United States. And so they're trying to take that away. That's what they want to do. That's why we're one of the number one targets. That's why those states in this country that stand more for this are targeted by the others. Because, and so here's another thing. They're setting up a trap. They've got a lot of things in place. So there's a lot of areas where they've taken away certain liberties in other countries, but they've not done the things that were done by Stalin and Mayo and Pol Pot and Hitler and all these other guys when they went around and take away certain rights like might be found in Amendment auf Zwei. So, but they don't want to play their hand. They're not quite yet ready to play their whole hand. I mean, that's going to be global, worldwide once they start really cracking down. But they can't do it as long as there's people here that are alert who are saying, no, we don't want no part of that. We understand what's coming. But once they take it away from us, game's over. The whole world is theirs. The whole world is theirs to do it as they wish, whatever they want to do. That's the ultimate power they're going for. And they can run it through China or whoever they decide down the road. Right now, China seems to have everything going in their favor. So they'll just link up somehow with that and assume that they're going to be taken care of. I don't know how that game's playing out between them and China. Maybe China will be their hands and feet, their army, and maybe London will be the finance, and who knows who will be the brain of it at that point in time. But they're setting up an oligarchy. They're setting up their goal is to set up a permanent, forever feudal system where they're not just feudal lords but gods, and everybody else is pigs and chickens, if you're lucky.
I don't know. I think you're right. I just trying to figure out how to prevent it. If I was the president of the United States, the very first thing I would do, the executive order, is tell the Corps of Engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers, to completely dismantle brick by brick the UN and dump it in the Atlantic Ocean.
Get in the bulldozers, just push it.
And just give them all those ambassadors, just give them a one-trip ticket back to where they were from.
Yes, if you don't get out, you're going in the water with the bricks. Amen. Amen. All right. Well, we've stirred the pot a lot. The time is now 9:11.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, for Greg it is. For you, it's probably 10:11, Paul.
Right. So interesting. So I think we've said enough here. So
before we go though, Craig, because of the things that I cover on my channel, about statism and what's going on with the bioweapon and the biology of the changing variants and the lethality and the virulence changes and all that. My channel, my larger channel, because I have 4 channels now, my larger channel bleeds a lot of subscribers because they're being declicked. I mean, you know this. I mean, it happens to you too. So they get declicked. Some of them are my mods. So, or they don't get it notified. They don't get notified. So, the people that listen to this, I need your help to be able to continue the message, because YouTube is trying to prevent me from saying the things that I'm saying by
we're all need help.
Shadow banning. So the people that have not subscribed, that are listening to this, that are part of Greg's channel, please come over and be part of the conversation by subscribing and clicking the bell and listening to not only my monologues, but also the people that I interview. I have interviewed Greg and Gail and many others, even Mr. Nostradamus, but to be able to move the ball forward on the things that Greg and Gail has said, we need to make sure that our voices are heard and that we can organize to be able to have a positive change, social change. It's not just social change, it's positive social change. All right. That's the message. That's the main message. So the people that are listening, please come on over to Paul Cottrell on YouTube and please subscribe, because YouTube bleeds me about 20 to 40 subscribers a day.
Yeah. Right? Here's what to do. Subscribe to all 3 of our channels if you're not already subscribed. But because of what Paul said, you got to come back and check from time to time. You'll probably have to resubscribe. I've already had people tell me, some of my closest followers say, Greg, I've been unsubscribing your channel 3 times, one guy told me. Right. So, and he was on my closest, most loyal followers. So, yeah, it happens. So, so just be vigilant. But also another way you can help is share our videos a lot. Share them as much as you can throughout social media, whatever you use, because we're trying to make a positive change in this world. Some people accuse some of us of being fear mongering. No, I say we're fix-it mongering. We're actually trying to fix the situation and make the world a better place. That's our goal. That's our dream, is to have a prosperous, peaceful world. But we're under siege right now, and we have to recognize that. So we are doing things. Like I said, you can join the Freedom Restoration Foundation. We're setting up a website for that, because we'll probably get taken off social media in the near future. But in the meantime, we do have a Facebook site and a MeWe site. But signing up there is good, but signing up there don't mean that it will translate to you being a member later, because we don't capture those. So it's best to email us. info@freedomrestorationfoundation.org. And know this, we are organizing. We're doing what we can. We're trying to find ways through this stuff. That's what we're about. We're trying to find ways to do it and to do it constitutionally. We're trying to find the right way to get through these things, to do it properly. So that is what we're doing. We're also, you know, we're all about surviving. I tell my people in my channel, I said, my mission is to help you survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. And we're very much talking about the hive right here. This is the big hive. This is the hive that you may not stay alive if you go into it, or you wouldn't know it if you were, ultimately. Now, yeah, maybe some time where all that would transition to a system like that, but just look at the era of loss of freedom and, you know, what kind of expense they'd want to maintain you at. You know, if people are thinking they want to just keep everybody maintained for nothing, then you don't understand the philosophies that these same people speak to us a lot when they talk about, we have too many people. They tell us that. They tell us that continuously. Go look at they wrote it in stone even. Just go look at the Georgia Guidestones. It's there, written in stone. So there you go.
And I just wanted to clarify one thing, Greg. For these kinds of discussions, I've now moved a lot of material over to Rainbow Healing and Wellness. So I'll make sure to send you the link for the description box. So the Rainbow Food Rocks is for the recipes and the essential oils, and then everything else has been moved over to Rainbow Healing and Wellness, just so that if people are looking for this kind of material, they know where to go.
Email me the links you want me to use. Paul, you said you got 4 channels. Email me the links you want to use, and I'll include them in the show notes. So
fabulous. Thank you, Greg.
Everyone, and I also did a video recently about staying the course, about staying centered in adversity. Right now we're being spun up. Everybody is getting dozens of emails and messages every day. Oh my God, see this. Oh my God, see that. And a lot of it just says the same thing over and over and over. So rather than get spun up, spend all your time spinning around all these little things, focus, get together, do something. You know, be the change you want to see. Because
that's what I say. That's Rex Mayor from Leap Project. That's his motto. I love it.
Bingo. I love it too. Exactly.
What's funny to prove your point? About 5 months ago, I had people that were watching my channel. They must have not been paying attention early on. They sent me these videos saying, "Did you know it was a bioweapon?" I was like, "Yeah, really." It's like. But you're right. There is this kind of regurgitation. There's this recycling of information, unfortunately, not moving the ball forward.
People are sending me emails saying, "Hey, did you hear about this bill or that bill? You know, like the 127." I go, "Well, did you notice I just did a video on that?" I told you what to do about it. Oh.
Right, but unfortunately, I do see echo chambering taking place.
Yeah, we'll be a lot more effective. You know, it's important to know what's going on and to see it, but at the same time, you got to get up and do something. Don't stay so spun up on reacting to all this stuff that you don't accomplish the mission. So I put my thumbnail as a picture of a B-17 flying Fortress flying through all the flak, because what happened in World War II is the pilots and the bombardiers, they had to stay on target. They had to ignore the whole world blowing up all around them, so that they could do their mission. They had to hope and have the faith that the fighter jets and their tail gunner and belly gunner would take care of business so that they can accomplish their mission. So they had to ignore, even though sometimes the shrapnel was ripping through their plane, you know, they might lose a rudder, Evelyn, you know, stuff was getting blocked. They were being hit. They were actually being hit by this stuff. Yet they had to stay the course and deliver their payload, the bombs, on target. And then they got home as best as they could with what spit and tissue paper they had to keep their planes together. But and some of them were really miraculous how they got home. There's a lot of interesting stories about those bombers and the crews, the pilots. It's just miraculous what they had to go through. But they had to have that resolve, and we got to have the same kind of resolve today to get through these times we're in, because the flak is literally going off all around us. So stay centered.
Well, I just to parlay into what you were saying, I had one uncle, all right, on my mother's side, that was a bombardier in the European theater during World War II. Now, he was a relative that I did not meet before he died. So, you know, he was somewhere else in the country. I think he moved to California after the war, but I never met him, but he was a bombardier. But I was very close to my Uncle Milt, and my Uncle Milt served in the Army. I'm trying to verify if he was airborne. We think he was airborne, but I have to confirm that. And that he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. but because during that battle, it was during the winter, it was very cold. So he had diabetes. So he lost 2 of his small toes, all right, during the war, but he kept on fighting. He kept on fighting. He kept on fighting. So he fought through the, Battle of the Bulge, and then, eventually they came up to a camp that was abandoned, but, let out the Jews. The Nazis left, when the Americans were advancing through Germany. So he liberated a camp, and he had a bunch of pictures made. But we were pretty close with Uncle Milt. And my grandfather served in the Navy in the Pacific Theater. But I'll tell you, even with my Uncle Milt, because he had diabetes and he lost those toes, over the years he kept on getting more and more amputations. It'd be half his foot, and then at the ankle, and then up the shin, and over the years, because it would deteriorate the skin, that with gangrene and stuff. But this guy literally fought, and shot Nazis. And I'll tell you, there's nothing cooler than to know that you had a relative that actually engaged in battle and shot fucking Nazis.
My dad was there. My dad was airborne. My dad was at the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. He was there. My dad and your Uncle Milt might have been buddies, for all I know.
Yeah, maybe, that's why we're saying that the stories that my grandmother the stories that my mother has heard, when they, during the talks, because I was a little too young for when they were doing these talks, because he died in the late 80s. So I was like 17. So I didn't even bother to ask some of the things that he went through. But my mother remembers the stories. So we're trying to confirm if he was airborne or not. We think he was, but the problem is that, everyone that served in the war is dead now. No one's alive that served in the war on my side.
I have some videos from my dad. My dad passed away last March, but there's some videos from him on this channel. And he passed away just 3 weeks shy of his 99th birthday. Come 11 April, he would have been 100 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Milt, he was like, he must have been 60s, the late 60s when he died.
He had diabetes. I mean, my gosh.
Yeah. No, I mean, he suffered from it. I mean, you could tell that he was, and I remember him, limping and stuff because he had an artificial leg and stuff. But this is a guy that, lost toes in the Battle of the Bulge because of, but he still fought, and this is the mentality of the greatest generation. This is that they went through adversity to make sure that they won. And I, unfortunately, am not seeing enough people with that same gravitas.
Well, they had a different attitude. My dad hated people that wouldn't work. I mean, he'd cuss them. Well, he'd just get mad if somebody wouldn't work. He'd say they were sorry, and he'd just go on a tirade. He did not like people that wouldn't work. And he'd always say, work never killed nobody. And I reckon it didn't kill him because he lived a long time. So
my grandfather, on my mother's side, he was a character. He bought a brand new Cadillac every year. All right. He had his own business, but he didn't trust banks. So he was always carrying like $5,000, but $5,000 back in the 70s. Right? It's a lot. That's a lot. That's like carrying 20 grand in your pocket.
More than that, probably.
So but this is the kind of person he was. And he's just like, he didn't trust banks, but he loved his cars, But this was the one that served in the Navy as the CB. Ah. But and he saw action, and and when he came, what I remember of my grandfather, he was very anti-Japanese, but I can understand why, because he actually fought against them. But that generation, there's a lot to be learned from them, and not everything they did was perfect. But the thing is that there was in the aggregate willing to serve and to persevere. So that's something that I think is missing.
That is the key thing. That's the huge thing right there. See, we're all caught up in these notions of perfection these days, and they don't exist. And so everybody's trying to live to a false standard, and they're judging people that, and they're using that to play people. And that's how the deep state gets the power they do over the people they get it. Is that we need to just sweep that aside and say, okay, what is it you want to do? What are you willing to accomplish, and where are you willing to go? And let's focus on that and quit. All that other stuff is flag. Damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I appreciate these conversations, Greg and Gail. I learned from them, and we need more of that. We need more of that sunshine that's on the flag, and less darkness. And it's only through doing will that happen.
I think some of that sunshine comes from Gail's smile. I mean, holy smoke, that's I see a lot of sunshine right there.
Aw, that rainbow.
Exactly. So, that's just it. The human spirit is beautiful. Like I said, none of us are perfect, but there's so much merit there, and there's so much beauty too, that we got to be able to hold to that and hold to each other and move forward despite all the flat going on around us. So let's do that.
Absolutely.
Well, that said, anybody got anything else you want to say in the recorded session? We might chat a minute after we
No,
stop the recording.
I appreciate these conversations, and thank you very much for having me.
Well, Paul, Gail, it's been a thrill to have you on the show here together. I've had you. I've been on your show, Paul, with Gail, but and I've had each of you individually, but I think this is the first time I had both of you on my show at one time. So that's been a real pleasure.
That's right.
Yes, and we'll have to do this again one day if I still have a platform after this. All right, everyone, again, subscribe to all these channels and keep checking back to make sure you're still subscribed. Share these videos from our channels, because we're trying to make a positive difference in this world. Join the Freedom Restoration Foundation, and stay tuned. We may have some protests coming up, some peaceable ones. We'll be within the accords. We're going to operate within the accords of the Constitution. So with that, it's Gail. I want to say thank you, everybody, for watching, and have an awesome day.